Over the last few years, V8 Supercars has not exactly had a lot of good publicity, has it? Between parody dramas, teams, drivers, and fans beginning to have issues with the sport's management, and I guess the management also thinks she's back, dropping down to two manufacturers. There's been a lot of trouble and drama in the series. Doesn't have to be that way, or at least it didn't. There's just been a lot of bad management decisions over the last 10 years, and possibly even more before that, actually. And that's just resulted in a bit of a series in trouble. What if they didn't happen, though? Like, what would the grid look like? What would the racing look like? What would the history look like? Uh, I'm I'm here to try and answer that question. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to do all this in one video. I haven't actually got my sim working yet, but certainly I've got a lot of planning done, and this is a bit of an instruction on how it would look. I think it's important to note that there would be three major changes to this world. There's potentially more that will affect certain teams. In fact, there are definitely more that will affect certain teams, but these are kind of the three that will affect the whole grid. So the big one is no COVID-19. Obviously, that disrupted 3 seasons worth of supercars. It would have a pretty negative effect on the future of the international race, which is something that still exists in 2023 in this alternate reality. That just doesn't happen. Second of all, in fact, I forgot to put this one on the slide, but Holden and Ford and Toyota never leave Australia. Toyota are also a pretty important manufacturer in this. They've been in the sport for about 20 years. And while they don't use the Camry anymore, they now use the GR Supra. It is pretty clear that Toyota was an important manufacturer, and they, along with Holden and Ford, never leave. So we still have Falcons and Commodores in Gen 3, alongside some coupe-based cars, such as the Supra. And finally, these two could probably just be combined, but there's not any issues about parity because they get the competent people who did the original V8 Supercar parody to actually do it again for Car of the Future and for Gen 3. And also good management decisions. The international race is kept, for example. The points paying rounds at the Melbourne Grand Prix is from 2008 here. Management doesn't try and drive the grid down, and just various other, so no super sprints as well. Race format, that's something I'll get onto in a moment, but there's no super sprints. So overall, this is kind of an alternate universe of what could have been if everything went right for supercars. Let's start by talking a bit about the 2023 championship and basically how supercars has evolved. So as of right now, there's 35 races in the calendar. This is actually a very similar amount to the amount IRL, just with 4 extra races out of the second Formula 1 Grand Prix in the same format as the Australian Grand Prix. There are 36 full-time cars. This includes 23 of the 24 IRL ones. Team Sydney is a 1-car operation, and so as well as a few teams that either don't exist IRL or are somewhat fantasy. So somewhat not fantasy, but used to exist. For example, Stone Brothers Racing still exists, although that is currently as a so that currently basically occupies the spot of Matt Stone Racing. There's also 6 manufacturers. In addition to Ford, Holden, and Toyota, I mentioned Nissan remain in the sport with the Nissan Z, which replaced the Altima as it says of the 2022 Gen 3 introduction. Another thing as a result of the pandemic, that car was not delayed. Then there are going to be 3 round formats. Formula 1 support rounds are 4 short races. This is basically as close as a Super Series you get, and that's just because F1 kind of takes precedence over supercars. The sprint rounds are similar to the 99s and 2000s split for sprint rounds, with 2 longer races rather than 3 short sprints. So there's still pit stop rounds and everything. It's just 2 races of a slightly long distance rather than 3. And then the endurance rounds. The Gold Coast round is not an endurance round. It remains the international driver round. until 2021 when it becomes a night race. And so it will be a night sprint, similar to the Sydney Motorsport Park format. And then endurance rounds, as I said, there are 3 of them, and they're all one long race. So that's kind of how that works. Turns out while recording that last pod, I completely forgot to actually say the other 2 racing teams, the other 2 manufacturers, but we'll see them here. We'll start with Ford though, because that's the first team on the list of the 2023 teams and manufacturers list. First up is Stone Family Racing. That's obviously the former Stone Brothers team, which Matt Stone buys a stake in after 2013. So it's run by Jim Ross and Matt. That team obviously has had Marcus Ambrose, Shane Van Gisbergen come through it. That happens in this reality as well. In fact, Shane does stay for 2013 and I believe 2014 as well as a result of his moots, as a result of the Stones not selling that team. Tickford's a 4-car team. There's not much else to say about them other than the driver assignments are a bit different to the way they were in real life. That's just because of the way drivers have moved around in this universe. And also they actually put Zach Best on the main grid when he was ready. And Thomas Randall too. So there's not as much of a seat jam at Tickford as there was IRL. And finally, GGR Team Penske. Penske is still involved in this as a result of the timing that Walk and Trojan United came in. Penske did operate a 3rd car for Scott McLaughlin. That car was closed down and sold after McLaughlin left for IndyCars, but yeah, that team still exists with Penske backing. So there's 8 Fords on the grid. The 4 and 35 for Stone Family Racing, the 5, 6, 55 and 56 for Tickford, and the 12 and 17 for DJR. Porsche. There are 2 teams, so there's 3 teams that run Porsches, total of 4 cars. Walk and United is the only multi-car team. This was in fact a new team that entered in 2018 rather than them buying the Holden Racing team. W entered with BMWs for the Gen 2 era, but after the deterioration of the relationship between BMW and Andretti, they ended up moving to Porsches. I realised I forgot to hit slideshow. But yeah, WAU runs the 25 and the 26, and they actually have a fairly long-term American driver in the car at the moment, Ollie Askew, who they kept around in Andretti after his departure from Formula E. There's also single car teams at Earl Bamber Motorsports, who are obviously a Carrera Cup team. They're basically the closest thing to a factory-supported Porsche. So obviously all the Porsche teams do have factory support, but they're the closest thing to like a properly Team Porsche in this league. And then Team Brabham, so David Brabham also owns a Supercars team, kind of the intention of promoting the Brabham brand. They don't have a supercar race for that yet because they'll of course only have the BT62. But 2024 or 2025, I think we'll see a Brabham design into Supercars. Mercedes-Benz, they remain in the sport from 20. So yeah, Brabham run the car number 62, and Earl Bamber Motorsport run, I believe, 718 because the Porsche in the series of the 718 came in. And then you have Mercedes-Benz. They remain in the series after 2013 with Erebus. Similarly to Walk and Trojan, Erebus come in as a brand new team rather than buying Stone Brothers Racing. They run. So they run 4 cars, although only 2 of them are under the Erebus name, and that is obviously the 2 Erebus cars, which are the 9 and 99. They also run the Paul Morris Motorsports car in collaboration with Betty and Barry Ryan. Paul Morris rejoins. Paul Morris obviously leaves the Supercars field after his full-time career is over in 2014. He rejoins in, I believe, 2019 in order to provide opportunities for drivers he's mentored through the Norwell program. So like Brody Kostecki, I believe, got his start in that car. Anton, Brock Feeney, I don't think did, because Brock Feeney obviously went directly to Triple Eight. but at the moment I think it's Declan Fraser in that car. So that's the 67, and then the final car they run is the 77 Team Cool Drive Racing entry, which is the Tim Blanchard racing car. They stick with Mercedes in Gen 3. That car will be going in-house next year, and then say our house next year, and then they also provide equipment and support to 23 Road Racing. They remain in the sport because the COVID pandemic never killed them. That's a pretty simple one for Car 230. Toyota, obviously, they switched so they've been in the sport for a long time, and they switched to the Super in 2022 rather than the Toyota Camry. The default factory team for a while was Brad Jones Racing, who remain in the sport with two cars, but they're no longer the factory team because in 2018 Toyota launched their own factory squad. That team runs the 3 and the 86. And then the car number 87 is annual Bathurst wildcard from them, awarded to the top two young guns from the Toyota 86 Racing Series support. So I think Will Brown and Cameron Hill both made their debut in that series. As of 2023, Cameron Hill stepped up as a full-time driver for them, so Colin Hill Engineering, his dad's team, or CHE Engineering, is providing technical support for that team. So that's 4 of the 6 Toyotas. There are 2 BGR customer teams as well. The third one was the Brytec. So the first one was the Brytec Motorsport car for a long time. Brad Jones took it in-house for a few years, and then Sam Shaheen and Yasser Shaheen from, big South African motorsport, South Australian motorsport names. Why do they say South African? They acquired that RAC, well, not that RAC, but like that car. But Brad Jones still run it under the customer racing name of On the Run Racing. That is the, I believe, 777. And then the 21, which was the 777 for a while, is their 4th car. It only switched when the Shaheens bought the original 21 car. They swapped the numbers. Is the Team Kiwi racing car. Tasman Motorsport, it's actually Tasman Motorsport rebrand. Tasman stick around because they aren't killed by the global financial crisis. They end up acquiring Team Kiwi Racing, running as Tasman for a few years, and then when they switched to a Brad Jones Racing customer Camry, they switched back to Team Kiwi Racing. So yeah, that car is obviously mainly for Kiwi drivers. Like Marcus Armstrong and Liam Lawson have both done a series of supercars when they've had time, and they've moved on to bigger and better things in this reality. Armstrong full-time in IndyCar, Lawson would be full-time in F1 in this reality. The Nissan Z, this I think would be a beautiful looking supercar. Just look at the Super GT variants. There's 4 cars here. They're all run by Kelly Racing, but 2 are under the brand name of Perkins Engineering for both brand name purposes, because Perkins Engineering is obviously an iconic name, and that name has remained on the Supercars grid the entire time through. In fact, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the. So if we don't include Dick Johnson Racing Team Penske, that's the only name that's remained the entire way through this thing from 992 all the way to 2023. But yeah, Perkins Engineering. That car was also run officially under the name of Nismo Global Athlete Team for a couple seasons, but everyone still referred to them as the Perkins cars. That's obviously 11 and 16 at this point, although it was 11 and 78 while Simone Di Silvestro drove for the team. And then Kelly Racing 7 and 15. Nothing changes other than they don't sell to the Groves. The Groves instead have a wildcard entry every Bathurst nowadays. And finally the Holdens, there are, I believe, 9. Yeah, there are 9 Holdens on the grid. This is by far the most of any manufacturer. So yeah, AAA and HRT. AAA and HRT are still the same thing now, although it's a merger of the 4 cars. It happens now. 3 of them run under the AAA Racing banner, although the 97, the Shane Vingersvin car, is scored with the number 2 Holden Racing Team car for points paying purposes. Obviously, the other 2 are the 88 and 888. And they have all the sponsors they have in real life, pretty much. Mobil 1 of the Mobil on the 2 car, they remain. Team 18 is a 2 car operation. 18 and 20, nothing much remarkable to say there, other than they have generally taken a more youth-focused approach than they have in real life. They're kind of, I guess, a 888 junior team, because they had Brock Feeney drive for them in the 2023 Bathurst 1000. no, not 2022, 2021, etc., etc. Gary Rogers Motorsport, they've got two cars. Obviously, they blood Scott McLaughlin here and in real life. They blood Jamie Whincup. Much better. They do it much better here. They actually keep hold of a good driver for a bit. And this is another thing that differs from this reality from the real one, but it's a bit of a change nonetheless. Nathan Hearn gets a super license, so he is currently one of the drivers. And then finally, the single corporation of Techno Sport, aka Team Sydney. The Team Sydney car makes it 4 capital C's that there are cars in, because obviously there's cars in Brisbane and Melbourne, but also the Team Brabham Racing Porsche has run out of Adelaide. Plus Albury, that's 5, I guess. So that's just Johnny Webb's basically passion car. It will probably come off the grid or be sold to Giberas or someone else whenever Johnny Webb retires in this reality, but for now he's running himself as an enduro driver in that. And here is the official 2023 grid. I have a spreadsheet which I'll put in the video description with every year from 1992 to 2023, and I have another one which, like, I don't know if this one's fully finished yet because I'll probably end up making it into a race results page as well, but there's all the scheduling. And actually, let's talk about the schedule first. Go away. So season begins at Newcastle. So lots of this stuff is as it is in real life. Newcastle, Adelaide finale, Newcastle start. There are a few changes. For example, Winton isn't on this year's calendar. It will probably come back next year. Probably swap out for Simmons Plains or something. Like get some rotation going on. The biggest changes from this Daytona race, this Pukekohe race. Obviously, there are no Daytona races in the real Supercars calendar. That's the international race. After 2021, international race becomes a, well, truly international race, as well as having international co-drivers. For example, Cameron Ward's Antonio Giovinazzi is a fun pairing. Just the first one I saw that I thought was particularly fun. The track is international as well, so 2022 will be Spa, 2023 is Daytona. And, well, by the time I'm done with simulating 992 to 2023, I'll be able to do 2024 as well. And that one I'm thinking will probably be Suzuka as part of a dream race weekend with the Super GTs. But yeah, that's the international drivers race. Then you have Malala, not to be confused with the other Malala. Please don't make that mistake. This is just a pretty simple naming difference because instead of building the bend, the Shaheens end up buying a bunch of land around Malala and refurbishing that track into what was meant to be host and enduro for a couple of years before that goes back to Sandown. SMP, that's one of the night races. Gold Coast is the other one. Pukekohe, that track remains active. Oran Park is also never demolished, but is no longer on the Supercars calendar for facilities reasons. Same thing with Lakeside. Tony Quinn in this reality is still fixing up. That might be back in like 2025. But the big change is the Enduro Cup. The Ipswich 500, the Queensland 500 still exists. And you have Sandown Bathurst still, although it was Malala Bathurst for the last 3 years. And then there's this. The other international race for Supercars, other than the true international race, is and this has been since 2008, so it's a well-established event, is 4 races as supports the Singapore Grand Prix. Same format as the Australian Grand Prix. Just simple there. Right now, discussing 2023. Stone Family Racing, they're carrying Jake Kosticki and Gary Jacobson, which is a pretty normal to Matt Stone Racing lineup there, other than, so Jack LeBrock is still in Nissan, so Tickford, Randall, Best, Waters, Reynolds. DJR have Todd Hazel and Chaz Moss, which is a very different lineup to the one there at IRL. The Enduro drivers are pretty similar. If you're wondering where Scott McLaughlin is, you'll see him in a minute. Erebus have Brody Kosticki and Will Brown. And in the regular Erebus cars, plus Declan Fraser and James Courtney in the customer ones, and Mark Winterbottom is in the 23 Red Racing Mercedes. Toyota's factory team is Cameron Hill and Nick Percat. Brad Jones is running Will Davis and Bryce Ford in its full-time cars, and then Matt Payne and Macaulay Jones in the customer cars. Matt Payne obviously doesn't have his opportunity at Grove Racing because Grove Racing isn't the full-time team in this reality. It's still Kelly Racing. So Payne instead goes to Team Kiwi for the 2022 and 2023 seasons so far. Walkinshaw and United have Kirk Kostecki and Oliver Askew, who I already mentioned. And then the other Porsches are run by Tim Slade for Team Brabham, and Callum Hedge for Alabama Motorsport. Hedge Sargent is the enduro pairing I'd be really excited to see, given how utterly rapid those guys are in their own categories. And speaking of which, actually, Hunter McElroy is a WAU co-driver. The Holden Racing team plus Triple Eight Racing Engineering, this is a stacked lineup. Anton is in the Holden Racing team mobile, so Ampol car, sorry, that's no longer the Mobile One car, as a Mobile One, and now with, I believe, I could have sworn I put Mobile One back on the grid. Oh no, I think I did with Newlon, never mind. Brock Vini and Shane Wengersbergen follow roughly their IRL career paths, other than that Shane doesn't delays going to Techno Sports for a year or two. And I believe thusly his card doesn't cut out at the end of the Bathurst 2014. But we'll see how he actually fares, because these races will be simulated completely differently. And then in the Triple Eight, I might be showing my bias here, but I put Andre Heimgartner in that car. Because I remember there were rumours about him taking the Brock Feeney spot. And the spot he actually takes is the 25, which is renumbered. So it's the 22, I meant. It was renumbered. This is Walkinshaw United's 25, but the 2 is, so that's the old 22 car that like James Courtney used to drive. I think Garth Tander drives in this reality. Team 18 have Tyler Everingham and Fabian Coulthard. Kai Allen is also on the bench for them at the moment. He will be full-time 2024. I get the feeling he might end up taking one of the Cool Drive racing cars, depending on what happens there. Because I think James Courtney might retire after this year in this simulation. Scott Pye is the Team Sydney driver. This was Zane Goddard until this year, but Zane has moved on. GRM have Nathan Hearn and James Golding, which I think would be their Supercars lineup if they still had the 2-car team. Dylan O'Keefe and John Cox as the injury drivers. That's a pretty strong team. Also watch out for Ben Bagwana in 2024. He could find his way there. And then the Nissans are driven by Zane Goddard, Richie Stenaway, Jack LeBrock, and Jaden Ojeda, which I think will be a much better lineup in this reality than it would look like in real life. And then there are the wildcards. There's 8 wildcards. No, there's 9 wildcards this Bathurst. It is a crowded thing, especially ever since the much cheaper Gen 3s came in. Going through them, the Toyota Gazoo Racing Australia car. This is, as I mentioned, the scholarship car for the Toyota A6 series. Lockie Gibbons and Job Stewart did well, and so we'll have 2 of the top 3 positions in 2022. The third one, Zach Bates. If you're wondering why he didn't get in there, that's because he's already co-driving in the 3 with Cameron Hill. But yeah, those guys are in the wild card. Grove Racing, Brenton Grove and Cooper Murray. Ben Barker not returning for this year. He was in every other Grove Racing wildcard. DJ are running 2 wildcard cars. The 98 of Smody Sylvester and Catherine Legg. Have Kai Allen not available for them. That's another Supergirls car, basically. And then the Team Penske 22 of Scott McLaughlin Will Power. 2nd year in a row for those IndyCar All-Stars to come back and do the Bathurst 1000. That's a very dangerous combination. Probably one of these wildcards has a serious shot at winning. Cool Drive Racing have the 78 car running out there, because that car will probably go full-time in 2024. Aaron Love, Jordan Love, this car entered in partnership with the Haupt Racing team of Germany, which is where Jordan Love is driving in the GT World Challenge. McElroy Racing, they don't have Hunter McElroy on their books, but they do have Harry King and Harry Jones coming back from Porsche Super Cup to start this race. There are 2 other Porsches on the grid as well. WAU have a third entry for Lee Holdsworth, who I'm not entirely sure how I missed this, but he didn't end up getting a co-driver this year, so I might have made up this wild card for him. And Matt Char Motorsport also returns to the grid for the 2nd consecutive year with Zane Morse as their co-driver. I get the feeling that would be a car that the fans would be rooting for a lot. Matt Charter and Zane Morse, 2 two of probably the most fan favorite drivers on the Super 2 grid at the moment. And the final one is a fifth Triple Eight car, Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim and Nick Foster. Uh, Obviously, Prince Jeffrey funding his own ride into the 1000 there. I won't go through every year. I might go back and do a video going for every year if that's something you guys want to see. But so the driver track will be available, schedule will be available, and then every single spreadsheet on this will be available. Obviously, not to edit. Like looking back at 2013, you still have Tony D'Alberto Racing, you still have Lucas Dumbrell Motorsport. There's the car that turns into the fourth BGR car, the Tasman Motorsport entry. TSR is a Ford team. There's the Walkinshaw Racing cars. That's what turns into Walkinshaw United. They go down to one car and then they re-expand to two when Andretti buys in. And look at some of the fun wild cards. Royal Harris and Nathan Pretty for Peters Motorsport. I live like 2 minutes from that base and I cannot imagine it producing a supercar, but it does in this reality. Finally, this is probably a bit that you're interested in if you're wanting to actually follow along with the series. How's this all going to work? I have the simulator. It's currently built for F1. It's built by a good friend of mine who I will absolutely shout out once I have the final version working. And it's basically an Excel sheet that will sim races for me. There are still a few things that need to be sorted out. Like it is currently, the reliability is currently very 80s Formula 1, which is kind of fine for Bathurst, but not fine for the rest of this series. Like we have 3 cars finishing in the first year, albeit there are only 14 full-time entries in the first year, but still 3 cars finishing is a bit extreme. So I need to sort that out. I need to add a control tyre and engine because obviously that one there's differences for car, and I need to go through and update the database for everything. But once I've got that done, which is actually the last task now, I've got all the teams done, all the drivers done, and all the scheduling done, then I'll be right to start simulating races, and I think I'll probably make a Google site to post the results. That feels like the easiest way to do it. I will let you know if any changes happen though. Yeah, so that's kind of the end of it. So that's kind of the end of this introductory video to the project. Obviously, I might still do a video going through every year, but that one will probably take a little bit longer to record than this. So for now, I guess I'll talk to you soon.